Thanks for staying. I guess I'm what stands between you and dinner, though I don't know after hearing what you said about food if you eat anymore. My name's Andy Levitt. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called The Purple Carrot, which is a plant-based meal kit company I started a couple of years ago. And it's an honor to be here tonight and share some of my perspectives with you, and I hope it resonates. So, for starters, I'll show you a little picture of my 4 kids. I don't share this with you to make you ooh and ah, though I do think they're pretty damn cute. But this is really my inspiration and what makes me feel very motivated to try to create a difference in our world. And unfortunately, I think that we're in a pretty rough spot as a human race. And I'll talk a little bit about that this evening, but while I do think there are some pretty substantial problems in our world, I don't think that they are so bad that we shouldn't stop trying to make a difference. So with that in mind, I sort of was reminded of this piece of art by Hieronymus Bosch that was done about 600 years ago. It's called The Garden of Earthly Delights. When I was in college, I was an art history major at Emory University, and I studied some art. And this one came back in a documentary I just saw a few weeks ago called Before the Flood. Anyone seen that movie? You have? And so it's a great documentary, and Leonardo DiCaprio kicks it off with this. And if you take a look at what this piece of art looks like, and you break it down into its 3 parts, it's a triptych. So you start off with this panel on the left, and it's kind of a Garden of Eden type mentality, right? There's a lot of open space, everyone looks happy, there's not a lot of people actually out there, and it's a pretty idyllic setting. When you get into the middle section, that's what might be more of today's era, where there's a lot more people, there's a bit of overcrowding, there's some partying, it looks like there's some sex, there's drinking, there's debauchery, there's a lot of fun stuff probably happening, and some things that might be a bit excessive, even to the most fun-oriented folks out there. And then the last piece of the puzzle on the far right side of that triptych is a pretty much of a doomsday picture of what is happening or what could happen. Now, this was again 600 years ago, but it's concerning that this could be a bit of a signal of what we are heading into, current politics notwithstanding. So, what you see here are, darkness and death and fires and destruction, and it's not a good image. So it's a bit scary to see that. Let's talk a bit more about things that are actually happening today, not what was predicted 600 years ago. So from a health perspective, and I spent 20 years of my life in the pharmaceutical sector promoting the value of Western medicine as the cure for most ills. So I share these facts with you with a great level of concern as well, that about 70% of Americans today are obese or overweight. As a staggering figure drawn off by the McRibs and other things that we just heard about. Even more scary is that 1 in 3 people are going to die from heart disease, which is America's #1 killer, largely driven by the food choices that a lot of us make. And 50% of us are going to be diabetic or pre-diabetic by 2030. That, to me, is a staggering figure that costs to our country, to our health system, and to just our humanity is really quite staggering. And a plant-based diet, which I recommend and support, is really the single best way that has been scientifically proven to reverse and prevent a lot of these chronic conditions that are plaguing our country. Now, from an environmental perspective, I'm not sure if you knew this, but 50% of our land is devoted to animal agriculture. That's raising largely cattle and chickens to be raised and slaughtered to be made into food that we consume as our appetites have continued to grow and demand a lot of this food, and it's triggered off a long history of lower food prices and grains that have been subsidized by the government that has perpetuated this large economic driver. But it's a terrible use of land from an efficiency perspective. When you think about it, a single acre of land can produce about 375 pounds of meat, whereas that same acre can produce more than 37,000 pounds of plant-based foods. So if you compare those two kinds of uses of land, it's also pretty staggering. Water is yet another key issue that we're facing. If you were aware of this, you may not have been aware of this, that 1/3 of all the fresh water on our planet gets used by the meat and dairy industries to do what they do. That's a staggering amount of water. And you think about what's going on in our country today. In the last 5 years or so, California has been living through arguably the worst drought in our history. And this is a very scary view. And did anyone see this in the news today? I couldn't have written the story better from a timing perspective, but this scares the shit out of me, excuse me. But the Earth hit a temperature record for the 3rd year in a row, confirming that we're undergoing big changes. There's a quote here that says, temperatures are heading toward levels that many experts believe will pose a profound threat to both the natural world and to human civilization. That's all of us. That is the world we are trying to inherit. And I think about my kids that I showed you at the top, the world that they, or someday maybe my grandchildren would ever inherit, but we're on a pretty scary path forward. So lastly, from an environmental perspective, animal agriculture is a huge driver of a lot of the carbon emissions that we have to deal with, where 18% of those greenhouse gas emissions comes from cattle, and that is more than all of the carbon emissions from all transportation combined. A lot of people think it's bad if you're driving a Land Rover or you're flying an airplane. You know, if people just stopped eating 1 serving of chicken a week, that's the equivalent of about 500,000 cars coming off the road. So it's really staggering to see what goes on, and you know, we have the opportunity to make some changes, and that's why I chose to start my company, which is called the Purple Carrot. And you know, you have that framework in mind of the problems, and I thought, okay, what can I do to change things? So we're exclusively focused on plant-based eating, and you'll hear a little bit more about why I characterize it that way. But that's our approach to eat very plant-based. Sounds like there's plant forward was one of the phrases that you used earlier, so that's encouraging. And this is, I think the winds of change are certainly at our back to have people embrace this more further. Simply speaking, the way it works is we source very fresh, non-GMO ingredients. We package them to small bite-sized amounts or perfectly portioned amounts and ship to people to cook meals at home each week. And this is sort of the whole way that the meal kit industry works, and that's more of what you'll hear about here. So by show of hands, have people heard of Blue Apron, Plated, HelloFresh, right? So these guys have done an amazing job. They have made my job substantially easier because they have helped explain what a meal kit is, why meal kits are cool and hip, especially among the millennial segment that has really embraced the meal kits, and they've done a fabulous job. And you know, Blue Apron and Plated were both started by 2 guys from Harvard Business School. In the same year, they both were riffing off of what they saw overseas in Europe and decided to apply the same model here in the United States. That was only about 4 years ago. Blue Apron, as an example, is now approaching about a $3 billion valuation. It's insane. They're the unicorn in the space, and again, I think they've done incredible work and have helped me as a relatively small startup really succeed within this space. So for those of you who have not yet received a meal kit, it looks like this with respect to the pre-portioned ingredients. So you get just the right amount of each ingredient you need to cook meals each week. The way Blue Apron has positioned themselves, which again helps everyone understand this, is you can cook incredible recipes, you can eat fresher food, let them do the legwork and expand your culinary repertoire. So that's sort of the general value proposition of a meal kit. And it is, it's a great thing. And so I looked at that and said, I should try to do something similar, just focused on plant-based. Now, what you see here is the passion that the venture community has towards meal kits. So the graph on the far right gives you a sense of the amount of investment that has been put forth into the meal kit category, which has just grown exponentially. On the left, a sampling of some meal kit delivery companies that have all raised a ton of venture money. I've raised a very small amount, relatively speaking, but it's sort of necessary in some regards. We can talk or have to answer any questions around that as you wish. But the upshot is there's a lot of money that is flowing into this category, and what you see here is how the whole food tech category has really blown up, and just the amount of companies like mine who are looking to disrupt the space in some way and attack food as sort of the new tech and see it as an opportunity to improve the food systems, improve people's health, improve convenience, and these meal kits really focus, as we do, on the convenience of shipping all the raw pre-measured ingredients you need to cook meals, and so it's really quite dizzying to look through that. Within the meal kit specifically, that category, I sort of point to these 8 companies, and I'm very proud to be one of these 8 at Purple Carrot. But these are sort of the 8 that I look at least, or the other 7, that I would consider as real strong competitors that have a strong presence out there. We're each trying to do it a little bit differently. Some of them are quite similar. I sort of look at a lot of them as like, you know, Starbucks, Dunkin' Donuts, and Peet's Coffee, and I guess there's a few other coffees that are out there that would round them out. We differentiate on the fact that we're plant-based. The rest are pretty much across the board omnivorous. I thought it's interesting, though, to share with you that only 3% of people in this country have actually tried a meal kit. With that, of those who have tried it, 67% have said that they have really liked the experience and would want to do more of it. And there's about 50 million people, or about 20% of the country, so there's still quite a bit of growth left in the category, of people who are interested in meal kits, and the category is projected to get upwards of about $35 billion. It's currently about a $2 billion market size category. So a lot of growth behind the meal kits, and I think it's really exciting and a cool part of the world to be in, and a space to play. There was a recent study that came out by the folks at Peapod that 2017 is going to be what they call the year of the home cook. So that's great news for me, because I'm helping people become a home cook more and more. And it talks about how a third of Americans are planning to cook dinner at home, and that 72% cooked at home at least 4 nights per week. So more and more folks are planning to do that. I think millennials top the chart. So for those millennials in the room, you are beating the baby boomers with your commitment to that, that New Year's resolution. What I thought was most interesting to point out here, though, is the bottom section, where 60% are doing it to save money, 59% to eat healthy, and 55% to waste less food. And I think those 3 attributes are quite consistent with what a meal kit is all about. So it's certainly a good sign for that. So again, what my mission here is to try to help people eat more plants, and that's what drives me. It's not about preaching veganism per se. I personally am not vegan, which might surprise people. And what I think also a lot of people are surprised by is that they think that Purple Carrot, which is the vegan meal kit, is just for vegans. And I've always said from when I started it in 2014 that we were vegan food for non-vegans. And lo and behold, 82% of our customers are in fact omnivorous, which is exactly where I was hoping that I would capture the market of getting people who realize I should probably eat a bit more plants for a lot of the reasons I shared with you at the top of this presentation. So, hot off the press, I'm going to share with you a new word that we've created. So you're in school, so it's good that you're learning new things, but this is a new word. I don't know how many times in your life you learn new words. So I'll be the guy that teaches you a new word that we've just invented called balancitarian. And this is really a thing. I just bought the URL, balancitarian.com, and soon we'll have this image, I think, up there. But the way we characterize a balancitarian is, as you see, a person who consciously integrates plant-based eating into their life while not completely giving up meat, fish, and dairy, also known as a Purple Carrot customer. So to me, a balancitarian is about, sort of doing things in moderation. I live much of my life by the idea of everything in moderation, including moderation. So I hope that you will join me in being a balancitarian and taking good care of this planet so that my kids can enjoy it. Thanks.